The afternoon sun was beating down on Bethnal Green Road in London's East End on July 23rd, 1964. It was a Saturday, the street packed with shoppers, families, vendors selling from carts. Outside the grocery store on the corner, a crowd had gathered to watch something unusual. A massive man, easily 6'5", weighing over 300 pounds, was shouting at someone half his size. "You think you're tough?" the big man yelled, his face red with anger and alcohol. "You think because you're a Cray, everyone should be scared of you? Well, I'm not scared. You're just a little man, and I'm gonna show everyone what happens when a little man tries to act big." The little man he was yelling at was Reginald Cray. Reggie was 30 years old, stood 5'8", weighed maybe 160 pounds. He was wearing an expensive suit, perfectly tailored, looking more like a businessman than a street fighter. And he was smiling. Not a nervous smile, not a fake smile, a genuine, amused smile, like someone had just told him a funny joke. The big man was named Tommy Big Tom Morrison. He was a dock worker from Limehouse who'd been drinking since noon. Tommy had a reputation for being tough. He'd won bar fights, intimidated smaller men, used his size to get what he wanted. And right now, drunk and angry about something Reggie had allegedly said about him at a pub the night before, Tommy wanted to fight. "What are you smiling at?" Tommy demanded, stepping closer to Reggie. "You think this is funny? I'm gonna wipe that smile off your face." Reggie's smile widened. "You sure you want to do this, Tommy? In front of all these people? Because if we do this, there's no stopping once it starts. You understand that? I'm not afraid of you, Cray. Let's go. Right here. Right now." What happened in the next 60 seconds became legendary in London's East End. The story of how Reggie Cray, half Tommy Morrison's size, destroyed a 300-pound man in broad daylight in front of hundreds of witnesses. A beating so brutal, so one-sided, so shocking that people who saw it talked about it for decades. This is that story. To understand what happened, you need to understand who Reggie Cray was in 1964. The Cray twins, Reggie and his brother Ronald, were the most feared criminals in London. They ran protection rackets, illegal gambling operations, nightclubs, and various other enterprises throughout the East End and beyond. But their real power came from violence. The Crays were legendary fighters. They'd grown up boxing. Both had been amateur champions in their youth. Reggie had won multiple titles, had been offered professional contracts. He could have been a legitimate boxer. Instead, he chose the criminal life. But Reggie kept training. Every morning, he'd run 5 miles, work the heavy bag, spar with professional fighters, practice technique, stay sharp. Because in the Cray twins' world, physical dominance mattered. Reputation mattered. And that reputation was built on people knowing what would happen if they challenged the Crays. By 1964, Reggie had been in dozens of street fights, maybe hundreds. He'd fought men bigger than him, stronger than him, more experienced than him, and he'd won almost every time. not through luck, through skill, speed, and a willingness to hurt people in ways that went beyond normal fighting. Tommy Morrison didn't know any of this. He'd heard the Cray name, knew they were criminals, but he'd never seen them fight, never understood what they were capable of. He just saw a small man in a nice suit and thought, I can take him. Tommy was about to learn a very painful lesson. The crowd on Bethnal Green Road had grown to about 50 people. Word was spreading. Big Tom Morrison was challenging Reggie Cray to a fight. People were running from nearby shops and pubs to watch. Reggie took off his jacket, handed it to a man standing nearby. Hold this. Don't let it touch the ground. It's expensive. He rolled up his sleeves. The smile never left his face. Tommy was bouncing on his feet, fists up, trying to look intimidating. At 300 pounds, he was intimidating, a massive presence. But his fighting stance was all wrong. Feet too close together, hands too low. He was a brawler, not a fighter. Someone who'd won fights through size and aggression, not technique. Last chance to walk away, Reggie said calmly. I'm giving you an out. Take it. Screw you, Cray. Tommy didn't finish the sentence. Reggie moved. Professional boxers talk about speed being the great equalizer. Size matters. Strength matters. But speed matters more. And Reggie Cray was fast. Incredibly fast. He closed the distance between himself and Tommy in one step. Before Tommy could react, Reggie threw a straight left jab directly into Tommy's nose. The sound was audible to the crowd, a wet crack. Tommy's nose exploded, blood immediately pouring down his face. He stumbled backward, hands going to his face reflexively. Reggie didn't stop. He stepped forward, threw a right hook to Tommy's ribs. Hard, precise, aimed at the floating ribs that aren't protected by the rib cage. Tommy gasped, the air knocked out of him. Then Reggie threw a left uppercut to Tommy's solar plexus, the nerve cluster below the sternum. Tommy doubled over, gasping, unable to breathe. The entire exchange took maybe 3 seconds. And Tommy Morrison, all 300 pounds of him, was already in trouble. Tommy tried to fight back, threw a wild haymaker punch at Reggie's head, but it was slow, telegraphed. Reggie slipped it easily, let the punch sail past him. Then Reggie countered with a 3-punch combination. Jab to the face, right cross to the jaw, left hook to the temple. All 3 punches landed clean. Tommy's head snapped back with each impact. His eyes went glassy. He was hurt, badly hurt. But Reggie wasn't done. This wasn't about winning the fight anymore. Reggie had already won. This was about sending a message, about showing everyone watching. What happened when you challenged a Cray twin? Reggie stepped in close, grabbed Tommy by the shirt with his left hand, and started throwing right-handed punches to Tommy's face. One after another, systematic, controlled, not wild swings. Precise strikes aimed at doing maximum damage. Tommy tried to cover up, tried to protect his face with his hands. But Reggie just switched targets, punched him in the ribs, in the stomach, in the sides. Anywhere Tommy left open. The crowd was silent, shocked. They'd expected a fight. Maybe expected Tommy's size to give him an advantage. But this wasn't a fight. This was a one-sided beating. An execution. Tommy tried to fall down. Survival instinct had kicking in. If he went down, maybe Reggie would stop. But Reggie kept him upright, held him by the shirt with one hand, kept punching with the other. Blood was everywhere. Tommy's face was a mess. Nose broken, lips split, cuts above both eyes. He wasn't fighting back anymore, just trying to stay conscious, trying to survive. Finally, after what witnesses estimated was about 45 seconds of continuous punching, Reggie let Tommy go. Tommy collapsed, fell to his knees first, then face first onto the pavement, unconscious. His massive body spread out on the street like he'd been shot. Reggie stood over him, not even breathing hard, looked down at Tommy's unconscious form, then looked around at the crowd. "Anyone else?" Reggie asked calmly. "Anyone else want to tell me I'm not tough? Anyone else want to show me what happens when a little man tries to act big?" Nobody said anything. The crowd was silent, except for the sound of Tommy's labored breathing. Reggie put his jacket back on, straightened his tie, walked away like nothing had happened. Tommy Morrison woke up in London Hospital about 3 hours later. His injuries were extensive: broken nose, fractured jaw, concussion, multiple facial lacerations requiring over 30 stitches, 2 cracked ribs, severe bruising across his entire face and torso. The doctor who treated him later said, "I've seen professional boxers after brutal fights. I've seen car accident victims. This man looked worse than most. The beating he took was severe, systematic, professional." When police came to interview Tommy about what happened, he refused to talk. "I don't remember anything," Tommy said. "I fell down, hit my face, that's all." "Mr. Morrison, witnesses say you were beaten by Reggie Cray in the middle of Bethnal Green Road, in front of 50 people. We have multiple statements. Then those witnesses are mistaken. I fell. That's my story." The police knew what was happening. Tommy was too scared to press charges, too terrified of what would happen if he testified against Reggie Cray. So the investigation went nowhere. But the story spread throughout London's East End. Within days, everyone knew. Big Tom Morrison, a 300-pound dock worker, had challenged Reggie Cray to a fight, and Reggie had destroyed him in broad daylight, in front of dozens of witnesses. The story got bigger with each telling. Some versions said Reggie had knocked Tommy out with one punch. Others said the fight lasted 5 minutes and Reggie never got hit once. Others said Reggie had laughed the entire time he was beating Tommy. The truth was dramatic enough. But legends grow in the telling. And the legend of Reggie Cray destroying Big Tom Morrison became one of the foundational stories of Cray twin mythology. Years later, after the Cray twins were in prison, Reggie was interviewed by a journalist about the Tommy Morrison fight. "Why did you keep hitting him?" the journalist asked. "You'd already won the fight in the first few seconds. He was clearly outmatched. Why continue?" Reggie thought for a moment. Because it wasn't about beating Tommy. It was about everyone who was watching, about sending a message. See, in our world, reputation is everything. You can't show weakness. You can't let people think they can challenge you without consequences. Tommy challenged me publicly, in front of dozens of people. If I just knocked him down and walked away, people would think, "Oh, Reggie's not that bad. He showed mercy." Next week, someone else challenges me. Then someone else. Soon I'm fighting every day. But if I destroy Tommy, if I beat him so badly, he's in the hospital. If I make it brutal and public and terrifying, then nobody challenges me again. People see what happened to Tommy and think, "I don't want that to happen to me." One brutal fight prevents 100 future fights. That's strategy. That's thinking long term. People thought my brother and I were just thugs, just violent criminals. But everything we did was calculated. Every fight, every beating, every public demonstration of violence. It was all strategic. Do you regret it? Beating Tommy that badly? No. Tommy made his choice. He could have walked away. I gave him an out. He chose to fight. What happened next was on him, not me. But he was drunk. He probably didn't fully understand what he was doing. Reggie's expression hardened. Being drunk doesn't excuse challenging someone to a fight. Doesn't excuse the disrespect. Tommy wanted to make a name for himself by beating a Cray twin. He failed, and he paid the price. That's how the world works. Actions have consequences. Tommy Morrison never fully recovered from the beating. Physically, he healed. The broken bones mended. The cuts scarred over. After about 3 months, he was back to work at the docks. But psychologically, something had broken. The beating had been so one-sided, so brutal, so humiliating, that Tommy was never the same. He'd been a confident, aggressive man before the fight. After, he was timid, avoided confrontation, looked away when people challenged him. Other dock workers noticed the change, started treating Tommy differently. The respect he'd commanded through size and intimidation was gone. Now people saw him as the guy who'd gotten destroyed by Reggie Cray, the guy who'd talked tough and then got beaten unconscious in the street. Tommy started drinking more, trying to forget, trying to recapture the confidence he'd lost. But it didn't work. The memory of those 45 seconds being held upright while Reggie Cray systematically beat him, unable to fight back, unable to protect himself, that memory haunted him. In 1967, 3 years after the fight, Tommy Morrison moved to Manchester, told people he needed a fresh start. But really, he was running from the memory, running from the humiliation, running from being known as the man Reggie Cray destroyed. Tommy died in 1982 at age 58 from liver cirrhosis brought on by years of heavy drinking. At his funeral, his brother gave a eulogy that mentioned Tommy had struggled with some difficult times in the 1960s. Didn't specify what those difficult times were, but people who'd known Tommy understood. The fight with Reggie Cray had broken something inside him, and he'd never been able to fix it. The beating of Tommy Morrison became one of many stories that built the Cray twins' fearsome reputation. Throughout the 1960s, Reggie and Ronald Cray used public violence to establish dominance. They didn't just hurt people privately, they did it publicly. In clubs, in streets, in front of witnesses. Because witnesses spread stories, and stories became legends, and legends created fear, and fear was power. The strategy worked brilliantly. By the mid-1960s, the Cray twins controlled much of London's criminal underworld, not just through business acumen or money, through reputation, through people being too terrified to challenge them. But that same strategy eventually led to their downfall. The public violence attracted police attention. Witnesses started talking, reluctantly at first, but eventually people were willing to testify. And in 1968, the Cray twins were arrested on murder charges. They were convicted in 1969, sentenced to life in prison. Reggie died. Prison in 2000. Ronald died in 1995. But the stories lived on. The legend of the Cray twins, built on incidents like the Tommy Morrison beating, became part of British criminal folklore. In 2015, a British documentary filmmaker tracked down 3 people who'd witnessed the Reggie Cray versus Tommy Morrison fight in 1964. All 3 were elderly by then, in their 70s and 80s, but they remembered that day clearly. "I was 14 years old," one witness said, "standing outside the grocery store with my mother. We heard shouting, turned around, saw this huge man yelling at a smaller man in a suit. My mother tried to pull me away, but I wanted to watch. The fight lasted maybe a minute, but it felt longer. The way Reggie moved, so fast, so precise, it was like watching a professional boxer, except this wasn't in a ring with rules. This was in the street with no rules, and Reggie just destroyed him. I'd never seen anything like it. The big man, Tommy, he tried to fight back at first, but he couldn't touch Reggie, couldn't land a punch, and Reggie just kept hitting him, over and over, methodical, like he was working, not angry, just doing a job. When it was over, when Tommy was unconscious on the ground, Reggie looked completely calm, put his jacket back on, walked away, like he'd just finished a business meeting. I've never forgotten that. 60 years later, I can still see it, can still hear the sound of the punches, can still see the blood on the pavement. It was the most brutal thing I'd ever witnessed. Still is. Another witness, who'd been a shopkeeper on Bethnal Green Road, said, after that day, everyone knew. You don't mess with the Crays. You don't challenge them. You don't even disrespect them in private, because word gets around. Tommy Morrison learned that lesson the hard way, and the rest of us learned by watching what happened to him. The third witness, who'd been in his 20s at the time, added, Reggie gave Tommy multiple chances to walk away. Said it several times. You sure you want to do this? Gave him an out. Tommy didn't take it. Pride, alcohol, whatever. He made the choice to fight. And he paid for that choice. That's the part people forget when they tell the story. Reggie didn't start it. He finished it.